Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar on employee engagement. Employee engagement is a fascinating but also quite complex matter involving many different aspects. The key, however, is to summarize it in a simple formula, which everyone is guaranteed to remember immediately. Employee engagement equals M times C to the third. Einstein could not have put it better, even though our C's stands for clarify, cultivate and communicate, and our M stands for measure. More on that later. Today we're going to share with you our knowledge and experiences so that this formula can also be easily applied in your organization. As always, there's a question button right on the screen where you can ask questions. We will answer them at the end of our session. Don't hesitate to type them in the questions box on the right side of your screen.
But before we start, I would like to introduce you to Jille Tabak. Jille has recently joined our team. He is an organizational psychologist and was VP HR at Unilever for many years. He started up Business Markets Netherlands to even better serve that market. Jille has a passion for team coaching and leadership development, and he's a father of 2 teenagers and a big Formula 1 and motorbike fan. For those, for example, from Jille's network who do not yet know Business Markets very well, a brief introduction. Business Markets is in fact an atypical consulting company, and here's a picture of our team. We are atypical because we all have been in the business ourselves for about 20 years. Hands dirty, feet in the mud, you know the drill. Now, our specialty lies in building actionable strategies, engaging employees, and creating value for customers. And based on the experience of all of our colleagues, both in B2B and B2C, and this in various sectors, we help companies and organizations to grow faster. Because a smart company knows that at crucial moments, they need the experience and the eyes of experts in order to force a breakthrough and then move forward faster.
Of course, Lucia, I would like to introduce you too. But who doesn't know Lucia? Lucia has been with Business Markets for more than 6 years, and before that she worked at great companies like Unilever, Coca-Cola, Mondelez International, but also in retail at Lisa. Lucia has a background in marketing and comms, and from there, via employer branding, built a bridge to people and HR, and became fascinated and passionate about everything that has to do with employee engagement. And actually, already Lucia presented a webinar on employee engagement in December 2020 in the midst of a lockdown, where she presented the BASE model, the lab of employee engagement. She took us through the 12 drivers that you as a manager in a company can work with structurally to let employee engagement grow. And by the way, you can still request a replay of this webinar via our Business Markets website. So you may wonder, why are we doing another webinar on this topic a year and a few months later? Well, on the one hand, because a number of employee drivers were underexposed at the time, and it's those parts that we are happy to pick up and deep dive further today. On the other hand, because the subject is evolving significantly, perhaps more relevant than ever. The Great Resignation, as it is called today, means that people are leaving employers and jobs on a large scale. And that is not just about money. People are leaving because of challenging work cultures, leaving because the organization no longer matches personal values, bosses who miss the mark, and so on. But people may be leaving jobs and bosses. They're not leaving work. So where are they migrating to? Today you will learn all about this great migration. How do you keep the right people? And how do you become the talent magnet and attract those migrating to you? Before we really get started, a final word in advance. This webinar is primarily for leaders and leadership teams, where you as leaders are human yourself, and where your own engagement levels may be challenged or under pressure right now. Leaders, like many of our customers, who already feel they do whatever they can to retain employees, and still that's not enough. We take you on a journey through our lab today, highlighting issues and pain points, providing hopefully some inspiring examples, and ending each sections with top tips that you for yourself and in your organization can structurally do something with.
Before we start, we should be clear about the definition of employee engagement, because employee engagement is not the same as employee experience, nor is it the same as job happiness or satisfaction. Because it's perfectly possible to be happy or satisfied in your job without being truly engaged. The difference is in the performance and the results. So we define a committed employee as someone who can and wants to give the best of themselves every day with full dedication and involvement, and this in function of the goals and the values of the company, and who also gets energy and satisfaction from doing so. It is very important to explicitly add this win-win balance because it's giving and receiving energy, and this system must be in balance. Now, why is employee engagement then so important? Well, research has proven that productivity and innovation go up. Your brand becomes stronger and people take better decisions. Customer satisfaction increases, so your business improves. And the employees' personal health also improve. They are happier and they have more energy. So retention goes up. More than that, employees will also help to be your best ambassadors to attract new recruits and thus support your hiring efforts. The link between employee engagement and business results is one of the most researched and also proven links. Gallup, Great Place to Work, Top Employer, Best Companies, Glassdoor, they all have investigated the correlation between employee engagement and the stock market value. So the studies do not contradict each other. Companies with engaged employees do better than their competitors. However, reality shows that we're far from there. Gallup measures an engagement of only 15%. So 85% of the employees are on average disengaged or at best neutral. And on top of that, we're now hearing massively about the Great Resignation, as Jille already mentioned. So it is today even more important to invest in our people and their engagement, and to do so in a structural and well-considered way. This means that we will have to make efforts that involve everyone in the company, not only an issue of HR, it goes wider. It is the whole organization who needs to be involved. So today we will take you through our employee engagement model with 3 major parts. And we will discuss the levers, the drivers for each part. We'll tell you what you can do as a team leader, not with simple one-off interventions, but long-term and structurally. And this way you can prevent people from leaving your company, resign, and you increase the chance of attracting the good people, migrate. And because employee engagement has something magical, something like chemistry, in which different elements react with each other, we have turned this model into a laboratory, the Employee Engagement Lab, and we're going to build it together piece by piece. So as you can see already, the lab consists of 3 major parts. First one in blue is clarify, because it's imperative to be very clear about your operation. That clarity will bring understanding and insight, and therefore empathy and motivation. Secondly, cultivate. That is the sum of all behaviors within the company, behavior and habits. How do we do things here? And then communicate, because you never communicate enough, but more on that later. So we're going to start with clarify. We're going to find 5 elements here that you can all control, plan, and foresee. Let's start at the top left with purpose and values. This is really the core of the company. Why do you exist? What is your dream? What is your promise? And how are you going to differentiate yourself from companies in the sector? This is in fact basic questions that are part of your identity. And to describe your identity, you need a passport. That passport has 11 boxes, and we discussed that extensively in the previous webinar. Today, I would like to draw your attention to the box environmental and societal focus. What are the choices you make in terms of your social role as a company? Because maybe you want to do more than just your business. Maybe you think that sustainability is very important and you want your company to contribute. Or maybe you want to make a clear statement on diversity and inclusion. Or you want to make specific efforts around the access to water and the sustainable water management. For some companies, that choice can be very obvious. Take Coca-Cola. They want to do something about the use of plastic and waste because their business is part of the problem. So obviously, they want to be part of the solution too. It is helpful, it is strong when the link is there, but it doesn't have to be. For example, striving for diversity and inclusion is very relevant in any type of business. Now, whatever choice you make, it's part of who you want to be. It's your identity, and therefore part of why employees will want to give their best. It is important to provide answers to all the aspects of this passport, to all your employees, because we all have the urge to belong somewhere, to be part of something bigger. So if your identity as a company is clear, then your employees can connect with it. They will be inspired to contribute to it. It is in fact the first very important step in structurally building an emotional bond between your employees and their work. By the way, you also use this identity, this passport, in your employer branding. And that way you can make the migration come into your direction, turn it into the great attraction. Let me finish with 2 tips. First, make sure your passport is clear and complete. And if you don't have this yet, then start as soon as possible. If you do have a clear passport, then ask the open question at, let's say, 5 people. If they know about it and they understand what it means to them, then you can build on it. If they're able to connect their personal purpose to your business and to their daily work and draw your conclusions from that. Second tip is plan an extra communication. Do another specific communication about your identity later this month. And this time maybe emphasize your social role and all the efforts your company wants to make in relation to the environment and society. You can use a few concrete examples to illustrate it. Let's now go to the second driver of employee engagement.
The second driver of employee engagement in our lab is the strategic plan. Most of you who know us or have seen a Business Marker webinar more often, they are familiar with our strategy into action approach through OGSM. If not, please check our webinar from January 5th that our colleagues Ides and Bram gave, available via our website. For the moment, and just to keep it simple, I assume you have a strategic plan. So what's the pain point here? That there are so many changes that people can easily drop out. The environment, the circumstances change so quickly that of course you have to respond to them. And that leads to new projects. And everything has to be agile now, of course. But most people are not suited or happy to be in Scrum mode all of the time, constantly adapting to a new 30-day plan. There seems to be little that is stable for employees to hang on to in the work environment today. People might feel a bit lost, and agile may seem to become a goal in itself, like this cartoon is displaying. So what are some top tips? We're not going to tell you to do an OGSM. We think you already know, and maybe you have one. If not, we're happy to help. Neither are we going to tell you that the world doesn't change and that you shouldn't adapt to changing market conditions. Of course you have. And of course you should. However, agility needs stability. The stability comes from your goal, from your objective. That goal, that dot on the horizon, is what you need to keep communicating. especially when you make adjustments in your plan or when you launch a new project to accelerate your growth. Explain how this specific initiative relates to the objective. And more importantly, how does this seemingly new initiative relates to the role of the employee? This will help to bring your people along instead of allowing them to simply disconnect. Those conversations create real engagement, real involvement. The conversations with your employees in which you can help to sharpen the role clarity again and again. Clarity in how he or she contributes and clarify in what is expected. Clarity in what is priority and what the focus should be. What's going to make a difference. And this is a nice bridge to the next lever of the Employee Engagement Lab.
Yes, roles and responsibilities. They flow automatically from your strategic plan, as Jelle said. We covered this extensively last time, so this time a bit shorter. The most important thing is that your strategic plan gives focus to your big rocks. We call them bears. This is where you want your employees to spend most of their time, and not on the chicken and the eggs or the issues of the day. So it's that clarity about your priorities, focus, and expectations that makes clear roles and responsibilities. Who does what by when, and what is achievable. Now, the interpretations of the teams working on the projects can be done agile, but the lead is determined, and that person will monitor the progress of the bear. And those bears should get all your attention. We have this physical, visual reminder for that. Now, the fact that you start thinking and discussing roles and responsibilities, or the who does what, with your team also ensures that you can build on everyone's greatest talents. So don't get stuck with static job descriptions. Let roles and responsibilities evolve with the projects and with the needs. In that way, you in fact get more flexible jobs. People will work with their talents, and that will give them maximum energy. And that is where engagement can grow. So there is the win-win. As an example, I like to show the collaboration between Unilever and Gloat, an online tool to match talent and projects. So on one hand, a team leader will fill in what skills he needs or she needs. On the other hand, employees will fill in how much time they have available and what the skills are that they want to learn or what the skills are that they would like to use. And then the system does the matching. It is like an internal marketplace for talent, but then on agile projects. So your whole workforce becomes more flexible and people can continuously use their talents, which is very energizing and engaging. And by the way, Unilever reports a productivity increase of 41%. So top tips. Describe roles and responsibilities rather than tasks or functions and keep them aligned with your key strategic plans, your bears. Secondly, provide sufficient autonomy and accountability in each job. Engagement increases as people have a certain degree of freedom. Now, roles and responsibilities in our lab are directly linked to personal growth and development.
Personal growth and development. As a psychologist by nature, I've always been interested in how people develop. Human beings by nature have a need to discover and learn. This is because our brain is programmed and wired that way, with a constant desire for new knowledge and experiences. However, when that brain is not sufficiently stimulated, it becomes lazy and bored, with all negative consequences. And the impact of this on our work environment is huge. The pain point here, or the issue here, is that almost 75% of employees do not believe that they can develop enough at work. And research has confirmed time and time again that an environment in which learning and development can take place has a positive effect on engagement. So the good news is simply that providing a learning environment in which employees can develop, by definition, has a positive effect on engagement. There's no simpler conclusion. However, if it was that simple, we wouldn't see such a high figure of 75%. So what can you do? My first tip is to actively build a learning culture with a certain rhythm. A couple of examples. At Business Markers, so close to home, we share in an app called Basecamp at the end of the week, every Friday, same time, what inspired us that week that others can learn from. And in return, others share it as well, so we get this community of inspiration and learning going on Fridays. By doing this on a weekly basis, we're actually creating a rhythm with that. Second tip, be a role model. Share once a week or per month how many hours you put into personal development and what your top 3 insights were. I worked with a colleague that did that and it was hugely inspirational. It doesn't have to be high quality, you don't need to think long about it. It's just the fact that you share this on a regular basis shows how important you actually think it is. And in return, you can also start asking others to do the same. My third tip is organize reverse mentoring. Instead of you contributing to the learning of others, what can you learn from, say, the youngest generation in your company? Organize an hour a month for a Snapchat demo or more information around gamification. And my absolute top tip, after many years as an HR professional, make development something fun, not a must-do. You have to change this, you have to learn this, because you're not good at it yet. In the annual development plans I read throughout my career, I mostly read a lot of demotivation, feedback on what employees could not yet do well and what they had to learn. What I would encourage you all to do is develop your people on their strengths, on what makes them unique. That's what they excel at, and probably that's what you hired them for in the first place. Nobody wants to become mediocre. A final element that you can plan structurally are your processes.
Thank you. Indeed, management and processes. This is an item in our lab that does not appear very often in books and articles. However, it is crucial, as this driver is about how you organize things, what your processes and systems are, your policies, your rules, your procedures. They all must be in line with what you promise in your identity, in your purpose and values. Otherwise, you have an inauthentic culture. Hence the connection also on top of the lab, also with leadership. Because certainly in somewhat larger companies, it will be the leaders who write the vision, the strategy and the values, but it is the daily, let's say, middle management that takes care of realizing them. So leadership is what you say your organization will do, and management is what it actually does. You will find more explanation in our first webinar about how to make sure your processes stay aligned with your identity. I want to give you just one more tip. Introduce the Purple Crocodile Day. That means that you organize a workshop where you ask input on how your employees experience certain processes. Everyone can then critically question all processes, challenge them, and of course also suggest solutions. By the way, the term purple crocodile is known in the Netherlands as a metaphor for bureaucracy. We're now done with the left side of the lab. We've gone over all aspects that you can plan and organize with the aim of creating as much clarity as possible. We will now move to the right side of the lab and we get there to culture. Company culture, that is the sum of all behaviors and beliefs of your employees. It's both internal and external. It's sometimes observable in a number of small things, such as the dress code or the office layout, maybe the working hours, your customer service and how it's organized. It's also recognizable in many non-tangible aspects. It is a feeling. It's a vibe, it's the energy you feel, it's a certain mindset. And again, here you can see 5 components that we will go over together. And we'll start with leadership.
One of my favorite topics, leadership. The Great Resignation can be stopped by a strong leader, by strong leadership. We already know that unengaged, disengaged employees have the highest risk of leaving. For about 20% more salary, You seem to be able to lure an employee away from an engaged leader. In the case of an unengaged leader, more salary isn't even necessary. So, great leaders who inspire and support their teams and employees are the most effective in retaining. Nice, thanks Jille for this nice little list of facts, but what can we do about it? Well, first of all, as a manager, you have to be engaged and inspired yourself. Put on your own oxygen mask first. Everyone in this webinar can name these people in their own work environment. Leaders who are inspiring, involved, supportive. So work on yourself first. There's nothing egocentric about that. You are no use to anyone if your battery is running on empty. More on this in the webinar driver a little bit later. And then when you have your own oxygen mask on, that's when you can help others. But what kind of leadership is required to create engagement in an organization? To answer that, I like to quote something from our business markers leadership model. This model is a webinar in itself. And the observant viewer will see that employee engagement is already a topic, one of the blue bubbles there. And that's because we offer a program on it. But I'd like to point out two elements with a particularly large impact on employee engagement. The first one is about congruent leadership. That's the difference between what you convey, think for example of the values you like to see in an organization, and your own behavior. In my years as an HR professional, I really see this as an issue or a pain point, a struggle with what you want to see in the organization and your own behavior that may not be congruent. That might be a little edgy here, but think about launching well-being programs without being able to take good care of yourself. Or think of pursuing a culture of accountability and empowerment, but still being present on every detail. In my experience, this gap in the workplace is one between being, what we think and what we feel, and doing, the actions that we take. The second leadership quality is about psychological safety and belonging. Many of you will know this model from Amy Edmondson. Psychological safety, together with responsibility, can lead to operating in the learning zone. And that's the zone where an organization wants to be. That's where you get the best results. It is not in the comfort zone, where it's more of the same, where people may be blind for opportunities and chances, and not in the anxiety zone, where mistakes are not welcomed as learning opportunities. And why is this linked to belonging? Well, you can have such a diverse team. It is the safety that people experience that make people feel at home, allowing them to give their best selves. And at its core, employee engagement is driven by feeling at home, belonging in an organization. My top tip, linked to the business markets leadership model, people don't follow people, people follow behavior. So make sure you are living the example or walk the talk of what you are propagating. Be honest with yourself, surround yourself with one or two people who can hold up a mirror to you, and normalize your own vulnerability as well. Be yourself, be human. Start a conversation. Ask for feedback. What can you do differently?
Now we're going to talk about recognition. Recognition is about giving appreciation, calling out why you appreciate your colleague so much, or what he or she is so good at. We talked about this also last time, and you certainly know this quote. You never be remembered for your performance and your result, but always for how you make people feel. So in the evening, when you leave the company, say maybe rather thank you than just good evening. Today I would like to talk about the evolution to a permanent feedback culture. Gallup recently published another article on how feedback is a driver of engagement. Their data shows that if employees strongly agree that they received meaningful feedback in the past weeks, then they are almost 4 times more engaged than other colleagues who didn't receive that feedback. So the key is to give your employees much more in the moment valuable feedback. And then we don't mean the all impractical scenario with documents to fill in and scores to give. No, just rather a meaningful reaction to what just happened shortly before. And that both in a positive way, so recognizing, appreciating, and in a constructive sense. We therefore like to call it fast feed forward. It's on the ball and it's future focused. There are many advantages to this way of working. It supports agility. Fast feed forward gives energy and puts the team in a position to make quick, on-the-fly adjustments. It also inspires excellence. If you're on the ball, you can make immediate adjustments, and achieving better results is motivating. And it retains talents. Today's employees want a manager who appreciates them and supports or even accelerates their learning curve. As a top tip, I like to quote the example of the Efteling. There, they recently stopped having performance appraisals because everyone who works at Efteling functions. Besides, it's strange to say to someone at the end of the year that they did not do well. Instead, they now work with a digital compass, where the employee fills in who he or she is, what he or she thinks is important, and how he or she sees the future. They also enter the targets there, and there is room for feedback from others. So this compass then comes up several times a year as a basis for what they call performance and potential sessions, meant to look at development opportunities for the person within the team. We now arrive at a driver in the employee engagement lab that is closely linked, and it's called relations. In the previous webinar, we explained in detail that companies where friendships are common have more engaged employees, and we gave you tips on how to foster friendships within your organization. A nice new tip here is GatherTown. That is an online tool where people meet virtually in a relaxed way. There are meeting rooms, there's a coffee room, there's sitting areas where you can walk with your avatar, and there you just meet others. And then the system turns on the camera and the sound, and you can have a chat. If you decide to leave the room with your avatar, then the cameras and the sound will also go off again. Today, I would like to talk a bit more about promoting open and honest communication as a base for improving working relationships. Now, we all know that we all have our own style of communication. One person likes it short and sweet, and another one likes to beef up the story with examples. And maybe a third person is mainly interested in the numbers that prove the story. To get a better idea of everyone's preferences, at Business Markets, we like to work with insights discovery. That's a simple model that goes back to Carl Jung, and it's based on 4 colors. We all have the quality of these colors within us, but each of us in a different order and quantity. And according to that order and quantity, you will also have different preferences in communication. What will you tell yourself? And where will your focus be when you listen to others? What kind of filters do you use? If we introduce this model to a team, then we had a lot of aha moments. For example, they then understand why a certain colleague doesn't give immediately her opinion, but allows it to sink in first. Or gone are the prejudices about another colleague who always wants to take the stage. Suddenly, there's more understanding, there's more empathy. So insight discovery is a good conversation starter that fundamentally improves relationships between colleagues. So as a tip, I would like to end this part by giving people the opportunity to become aware of their own preferences and needs in communication, and then have everyone write their own manual. How does each individual like communication? Or it is the How to Work with Me guide. Then we go to the next lever in Cultivate, and that is well-being.
Well-being really belongs in the employee engagement lab. And now with all COVID, virtual working challenges, even more so. No doubt you have seen many variations of this model and how important dimensions are to your energy levels and of those around you. In the context of the Great Resignation, the issue and the pain point is the opportunity that people are looking for better personal well-being. Many are really concerned that the work culture and the physical virtual environment combined with everything else that is important, the so-called work-life integration, is no longer a fit. So people start to look around. Gallup found a very interesting paradox, the engagement well-being paradox. Engagement and well-being move up and down together. High engagement is generally seen in employees with a good well-being balance. In the current COVID dynamics, however, we see a combination of high engagement and high stress levels. The combination of hard work, care for learning kids, isolation from family, friends, colleagues, not being able to blow off some steam in bars or restaurants simply seems too much. So, what can you do about this as a leader? First of all, it's extremely important that you stay alert for signs of burnout. Think, for example, of prolonged fatigue, being irritated easily, lack of focus, cynicism. There's a lot to find online. Take a moment to inform yourself. Especially in the case of apparently high-performing and highly productive employees. People who work mostly virtually feel and perform better with regular check-ins. How are you doing? Do you need any help somewhere? Just a 5 or 10 minute check-in does a lot. Send flowers and a card to the one that can't be there for a while. Or send flowers and a card to the one who's extra busy as a result. And if you think you already spent enough money on flowers and cards, again, make it personal. Pick up the phone, give a call. Organize team get-togethers. You don't have to do all of this yourself. Just find the passion and the energy in your organization. Find a colleague that is very good in dealing with stress. And let him or her organize a team meeting. Find someone that is able to work hard, combining with taking care of family or elderly care. Someone that found the magic trick in work-life integration. What can you learn from that? If you want to know more about this, we are happy to help you on your way. In short, start the conversation and organize. You will create a culture of dialogue, of listening, of empathy. My top tip, or a potential possible themed meeting that I would highlight more specifically or separately, is the importance of recovery. Take the parallel to top athletes. You can't always deliver peak performance. What do you do after the peak performance is done? Start the conversation. For instance, after an important deadline. What will someone do to recharge? Or just in general, what do you do to relax? How is your quality of sleep? Hopefully these conversations will also become a little easier again as we get back into the new normal evolving workspace. Workspace perhaps more relevant than ever. Basically, so far this was about well laid out workspaces, accessibility of office, the opportunity to meet colleagues and hopefully have a great lunch, that had all a big impact on engagement. However, the last 2 years of virtual working are full of new discoveries, and the old normal, where we're all in the office for 5 days a week, will likely not happen anymore in the future. We all know that. The pain point here, however, is that we now have 2 camps emerging, and you probably can't keep both of them happy. So, there may be a camp where people never want to go fully back into the office and feel that they are more successful in how they manage their lives through their work-life integration. The benefits of working from home, no travel time, more flexibility in the family situation, better well-being, are all strong motivators, and it simply does not seem logical to disappear anytime soon. Next, there may be a camp of people that want to leave the drama of working from home and those dark days behind as soon as possible and will take every opportunity to get back into the office. The truth for sure lies somewhere in the middle, a hybrid model. Not responding to this sufficiently as a leader or leadership team will definitely contribute to the Great Resignation. And we see that all over the world already. So what can you do? Companies need to rethink their policies around flexible working. One size does not longer fits all. It's not going to work. Flexibility, autonomy, and a healthy integration of work and life are engagement drivers. What structural changes are you going to make to your policies around this? A few top tips. Be particularly specific about what working from home is for, what office work is for, and organize around that. For what reasons do people want to go to the office? What is your so-called workspace value proposition? What are the true high-impact experiences that can only be done in the office? The next top tip is learn to deal with hybrid. Partly physically present, partly not. What does your hybrid strategy look like? When is it actually fine, but also be clear on when it is a no-go? We finished now with the right side of the lab. We've gone over all the aspects that have to do with creating a culture.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, we come now to the third part of the lab. It's about communicate. And I said it before, you can never communicate enough. The moment that you get really tired of your own message is the moment that it starts to land in your organization. Now, this aspect of the lab is not about the personal communication between two people, nor it is about the information that you need just to do your job. What we want to discuss here is the internal communication about everything that is going on in your company, professionally and emotionally. This internal communication must and can be structurally organized. It requires a professional approach, planning, and a good execution combined with the necessary flexibility. The lab is therefore set up in such a way that all the previous drivers that we discussed, they are linked to a kind of receptacle at the bottom, and that symbolizes, in fact, the internal communication. Because all elements that we have already gone through provide content to inform, to inspire, to engage your employees. So you need to communicate regularly about your identity, about your strategic plan, about how you deal with roles and responsibilities, and so on. So a well-organized internal communication is crucial. It's crucial to grow, to increase your employee engagement. Without active internal communication, there's no employee engagement increase possible. Now, the important things that you have to do are the following. You have to work multi-channel, so both online and offline, where today I would really emphasize avoiding email as a communication channel, because most people are already drowning in emails. Go back to print today, for example. Secondly, you want to do it sufficiently frequent and consistent. Once a month is really a minimum. Once a week seems to be ideal to me. You also want it to be interactive, giving the employees the opportunity to respond, and then you have to listen to their input. It has to be in line with your values and your brand and culture, and of course, fully inclusive. Some top tips here. Communicate with warmth and emotion. Anticipate the concerns and the questions of the teams you're addressing to. Provide sufficient context about the why of your action and be there as transparent as possible. Make also room for dissent, for disagreement and diversity of opinion. Realize that there is so much richness in all those responses. Make sure there are enough communication channels through which your employees can react and respond. And then repeat, repeat, repeat. Our attention nowadays is extremely fragmented. So you have to repeat your message at least 7 times through different communication channels if it is to land with the majority of your employees. Now, anyone who has paying very close attention knows that we have gone through the full circle in our lab and that we have discussed, in fact, 11 drivers. However, in the beginning, we talked about 12 drivers. Where's then the 12th piece? Well, you can see that each container of this lab is filled with liquid, and there are dashes on the receptacles to measure it. So the 12th element, in fact, is the constantly measuring your status on all of the drivers. That is keeping your finger on the pulse on how every subdomain is perceived by your employees. Ideally, you should measure this monthly, not only annually, and ideally, you should measure all of the drivers separately, maybe in a kind of rotating system. The end score, which is as a kind of resulting from the lab, is the score that you give to your employee engagement, and we call that ENPS. To measure your ENPS, there is a specific question you have to ask, and that is, to what extent would you recommend our company as a workplace to others? Employees will then score that from 0 to 10. Those who score 9 or 10, we call them promoters. They will actively advertise your company. In Flanders, it's sometimes even decided to include the 8 also as a promoter score. And then those who score 6 or lower, we call them detractors because they're more likely to speak negatively about your company. In between are the rather neutral people. Then to measure your ENPS, you take the percentage of promoters and subtract the percentage of detractors. Theoretically, you can then get scores from -100 to +100. The reality is rather between -50 and +50. And then depending on the industry, depending on the nature and the maturity of your business, you will get very different numbers. So it's often difficult to compare. Let's just say that if you score positive and you go towards a 20 or a 30, you're already doing very well. Now, whatever the result is on your ENPS, if you just measure that, you don't know what is driving this score and what you need to work on. So there again, that is why it is so important that you gain insight on how people perceive your organization on all of the different drivers. Now, in the previous slides, you have maybe seen that the lab was completely full and flowing. That is, of course, the perfect situation. Full means that everyone is perfectly satisfied with the drivers. In reality, when we do analysis in the companies we work with, and this can be done through surveys or with workshops, that is not what we see, logically. We then show the result of the survey and the workshop in a lab that you see here in the slides. That way, everyone quickly gets a view of where things are going well and where they're going wrong. And we can easily set up action plans to improve. And once you're up and running, you regularly re-evaluate and make adjustments. And that, in fact, is a perfect bridge to the end of this webinar.
Lucia, building employee engagement is a journey, and the journey is more important than the destination.
Yeah, but what is more important than the journey and the destination? It's the company.
It's the company. I'd like to take you through today's takeaways. To advance with employee engagement, you must work structurally on the 3 engagements, components of the employee engagement lab. Clarify, cultivate, and communicate. And of course, we shouldn't forget measure, as Lucia has just been talking us through. To bring this back to the beginning of the webinar, if Einstein would still be alive, he put it this way: employee engagement is M times C to the 3rd. Measure, clarify, cultivate, and communicate. The takeaways, and in doing so, please remember the following. Start from your identity and keep the focus on your goal. Be clear about the big rocks, the bears. Secondly, put on your own oxygen mask first before helping others. Third, go to fast feed forward. Provide feedback regularly and in the moment. And above all, stay connected. Communicate, communicate, communicate. We wish you all the best with this, and we will gladly help you to transform the great resignation into the great migration. We will now also run through our desks, so give us a moment, please, because we will answer all your questions. And in the meantime, you can already subscribe to the next webinar with the button on your screen. See you in a second.